So it will pop up. Just go to there. So you go on that and then you go to the share button. Just trying to remind. Share to Firehouse. Yes. Share.
Yeah. They might change the food thing.
No, yeah.
Yeah, they got a lot more than me followers than me.
I'm digging the chalkboard.
Yeah. Well, we always have a chalkboard at Pub Theology, so there's our chalkboard for today.
I like
Brought to you by Maura,
it.
her daughter.
I used to have one, and I actually am digging it for just a general sign. It's reusable, bright,
Yeah.
sturdy.
Sturdy.
Yeah.
We've had ours for 4 years at the
I'm
Friendly
going to
Spot.
IKEA and
It's-
get myself one.
We got that dated a few times. But how old's your son now?
Love it. I say that with a big, like, shot to my heart because he's. I know. They do. He's a lovely child. I'm very blessed. Yeah, and he's got the same attitude any 11-year-old has. At least he's kind.
You're gonna have to maybe look at it when I get there. You can kind of check with the link.
Okay.
Hey, Pub Theology friends, welcome to a special online version of Pub Theology, a living room session at my co-host Bekah and McNeel's house near Trinity University. We're in a special time right now where we're trying to stay connected as a community but still practice social distancing during this COVID-19 crisis that we're a part of. Pub being the common good. And tonight we're going to be talking about faith, but a different type of faith. I think we're going to be talking more about faith in each other. We as a community can come together to slow down this crisis, flatten the curve, and really try our best to finally let this COVID-19 virus just pass us by in the best way we know how. And so there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be talking about. How can we be a compassionate neighbor to those around us while still trying to separate our physical selves? And that's not what we're usually used to as humans, but we're going to be talking about that. And we have some great guests here tonight to talk about our city, to talk about what's going on, and how we as a community can find creative ways to support each other, to support those who might be senior citizens or those more affected by the COVID-19 virus. So I have a good friend of mine. She's Erika Prosper. She is a great leader in our city. She is the First Lady of San Antonio. But really, the most important thing is she's an awesome citizen of San Antonio and is a great mother and a wife. And, she works at HEB, has a killer job. And we're going to invite her to come share about being a compassionate citizen of San Antonio here soon. I'm with my co-host, Bekah McNeel. We're going to be alternating this interview because we're trying to create safe distances with all the people we're interviewing tonight. So there'll just be 2 people here at one time. So we create a safe environment for ourselves and really promote what we're trying to promote, and that is safety above all else. So welcome to Pup Theology. We're going to begin. I'm going to introduce Erika Prosper to come sit down with me here in the seat here. And this is now our fireside.
We're an arm length away.
We are an arm length away. It's our fireside chat here at Bekah's house. We have some fun props here. We're going to be throughout the night talking about ways we can help those around us and really supporting local businesses in San Antonio. The first one we'll talk about is Pure Juice. It's in Southtown San Antonio. It's going to stay open during this event because you can get juice to go, and they have all different types of juices. You can just call in and order, and they'll curbside deliver it for you, and you can just pick up some amazing juices from that, all different flavors that do all different types of things. And so really there's things that we can still go out and get for our families when we are in need. So Pure Juice and all the juice places around town. We love you, all those local places like Earth Juice Bar. What are some other ones?
Southwest Elixirs.
All right, there you go, right there. So support all those people. Erika, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
This is not the first time you've joined us at Pup Theology.
Nope, it's my second time.
It's your second time to host. She came a few years ago to talk about the power of grandparents.
Yep.
And so at Pup Theology, each week is different. We talk about all different types of things and different topics.
It resulted in an event too.
It was.
That Pup Theology ended up getting embraced by a local organization called OATS, Older Adults Technology Services. They combined with Senior Planet and did something as well with other groups, Compassionate San Antonio. We ended up holding a sort of Grandparents' Day celebration where we had 4 to 5 of our senior leaders come and talk about what it's like to be a grandparent and give advice to the younger generation. So it all came about because someone suggested it at Pup Theology.
Wow. See, these are things I don't even know. But what's interesting is when we talk about our grandparents and senior citizens, this is something that we have to care for during this crisis. So I'm going to introduce my co-host for many of my Pup Theologies, Bekah McNeel. She used to be a reporter at the Revard Report. Now she's an editor at Christianity Today magazine doing immigration work. And so Bekah, welcome to the set.
Hi Bekah, how are you?
Well, hello, Erika. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Let's pick up kind of where Gavin left off with the people we're taking care of right now. One of the things that keeps sticking out to me is that everybody's saying, if it feels like overkill, it's not. It means it's working.
Gotcha.
Because the people around you aren't sick.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of, it's difficult when you don't feel the danger, or it's not maybe not you're in the category where it'd be like a bad cold or the flu.
Yeah.
So let's talk about taking care of the people who aren't maybe necessarily our drinking buddies or even our coworkers, but people who would be most affected.
Well, I think you're right. I think we're in a, human beings by nature are social. When someone tells us we can't be around others, we want to do the opposite. It's kind of like the joke that used to be around: if your mom tells you not to date that boy, you're going to date that boy. And I think it's because we are just wired that way. We're wired to take care of each other, to be in packs, and to just ensure that the species survives to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So I think that this idea of social distancing is a very hard one for a lot of people. And then in San Antonio, where we're a friendly city, where
lots of huggers.
Lots of huggers, and then the double kiss.
Oh Lord.
As a Latina, this has been the hardest part for me, to not reach in and kiss people. But I think the result of it has been an awakening. I think that's what I see, at least with a lot of people online and who are watching us now, is this awakening of this larger than the self, even though oddly enough you're supposed to concentrate on the self right now. So there are opportunities for us to really look at those vulnerable populations, with seniors being one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
I'm really glad and happy to see so many people ask for what can be done to help seniors. what can be done to alleviate their needs, what can be done to try and not have them be put at risk. And I know people are asking for, everything from senior hours to check in on someone who's a senior. And even organizations like Meals on Wheels, the Food Bank, who have already had pillars dedicated to seniors. I think even people are paying more attention to what can be done to help them.
But I also know that's a population that is really vulnerable to
Yes.
isolation.
Yes.
I know that a lot of the senior centers are closing their doors, no visitors, which obviously is to keep them safe and keeping them alive is priority one. But is there anything we can do to help with the sense of isolate? They already, especially for people who are living in homes, maybe are already feeling a little bit set aside. How do we help them still feel part of our community?
Well, I think this is really where the technology aspect of where we're going has to put in play. Today, specifically, Oats and Senior Planet put together a Facebook Live for any caregiver or any person who cared about their family member or any nonprofit to walk them through how to order curbside on HEB.com, for example. But I think the power of that is that it also reiterated how important it is for us that have an awareness of how to set up things for technology, that maybe we take the time to, call our grandparents and talk to them. That's technology, believe it or not. A phone call is technology.
Oh, absolutely.
If you have parents who are a little more with it and who know how to use FaceTime, this is the time to use FaceTime. This is the time to use texting. This is a time to use almost every arsenal out there to be able to reach out, because sometimes it doesn't necessarily require these long, drawn-out conversations, but it requires them to know that there's somebody on the other line. Even if you're not on the other side of the door, you're on the other side of the line.
And you're thinking about them.
Yeah, and
I think a lot of people just don't want to feel forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think that remembering each other in times like this is.
And dare I say, this is also a really good time for good old-fashioned snail mail.
Oh,
I know that this sounds.
The return of the letter.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I've got stationery that I got that is piled up in a drawer somewhere.
So cute.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to use it.
Adorable. Use
Super
it.
cute,
Specification. Guess what? Take it out.
Yes.
Write a note. Write a letter. Even if it just says "thinking of you." Put it in the mailbox for the mail delivery man to take it, woman to take it to your parents, to your neighbor, to whomever.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing to note is that you can reach out to organizations that are trying to figure out how to help. Meals on Wheels, when they deliver, they can also deliver notes from people.
Oh, yes.
They don't necessarily have to just deliver the food. So reach out to Meals on Wheels and find out, where can I send or where can I drop off a bunch of notes that I did or my kids did.
Well, kids are at home doing art all day long.
Yeah. That's another way for them to kind of feel that we're connected.
And I will say, on the kids thing, my children's teachers sent them videos just saying, "Hi, I'm thinking about you, I miss you so much." The grins on their little faces, where my son kept trying to talk to it, but it was, and he kept
That's
going,
so cute.
like, "Hi," and trying to show his teacher stuff, and I just thought, it meant the world to them, and I think it means the world to adults as well, when you think, oh, somebody thought, what are they going through right now? Somebody took the time out of their crisis. Because I think that's the danger, maybe, is that we all feel like, I've been totally guilty of this, right? Oh, it's all so hard. I'm working from home with my kids, and they keep interrupting me, catastrophizing my situation.
Yeah. I think we all have done that.
Yeah, because it's super disruptive.
Yeah, and it's happening to us. But
Yeah.
I think what you're alluding to is it's really happening to everybody. So
Yeah.
we're all in the same boat, and this thing isn't discriminating.
No.
Income, background, it doesn't discriminate. So.
But it is going to hit some people really hard, and I think that I've appreciated the reminders from everybody to think about, if you're struggling to work with kids, think about, everybody else, and think if you're feeling isolated and weird, like I haven't seen anybody, how are people feeling who don't get to see people a lot during the day, and suddenly their weekly visit from their kids is off limits.
Cut short, yes.
So maybe if call grandma has been on your to-do list and it keeps getting bumped, now's the time.
The other thing about it is that, and I don't know, somebody that works in a nursing home can probably chime in and tell us, but I don't know whether or not, they accept messages, or you can just email random messages to those nursing homes, or text them, or do something so that, the nurses can print out the messages from strangers, just saying hello. Because I know maybe even depending on the strictness of each area or specific business, they may or may not let even outside things come in. So again, if you really want to do something to connect with people that are either in homes, or that of a friend's grandparent who's now having to self-isolate, it's just as simple as just a little bit of research to find out what you can do. But whatever you can do, use everything from paper and pen all the way to the deluxe version of technology to be able to do it.
What else is going on around town that we need to be aware of that maybe helps us remember that we're still connected? What else is out there?
Well, I'll tell you, I have seen so many groups pop up, or friendship groups pop up and say, hey, let's have virtual happy hour. We're all going to FaceTime each other and talk to each other over FaceTime and sort of, partake in our own places. I've seen people, stay-at-home moms who have, never necessarily had to share their secrets. A lot of times we think about it, but these mothers, they do just as much work and have jobs every day to take care of children. They're coming out and saying, hey, here's how you can do this. Those of you who are now
experts.
Exactly. I've seen mothers who are homeschool experts who have come out and said, hey, I will do a Facebook Live telling you guys what kind of curriculum you can use, things that have worked for me. So I think what I think is really amazing, and what I think is being seen out there, is that people are reaching out, and people are doing it out of kindness and out of helpfulness. And I think that's really the message here that I'm really excited by more than anything else. Yes, there are still some messages out there that want to kind of get into who did what, who's to blame, but I have to tell you, I guarantee you 95% of things I'm seeing out there, whether it be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything, are people helping people navigate through this time.
Yeah.
Nobody likes ambiguity,
Right.
Nobody does. So the idea that we have homeschool mothers stepping up to teach mothers who don't necessarily have that skill set, the idea that we have restaurants, as we talked about, saying, hey, we know that you can't come in to enjoy your favorite meal, so we're going to go ahead and deliver, or curbside pickup, or do all these things to help you still have a great meal. The idea that people are pulling their money together to help those nonprofits that might have been affected by the closure of events,
that's awesome.
has been amazing. And a shout out specifically to USAA, who is matching any of their employee contributions up to $500 to nonprofits. So if you're a USA employee and you say, I'm going to donate $250 to the food bank, or I'm going to donate $250 to Texas Diaper Bank, or other frontline nonprofits that are helping, USA is going to match that $250.
That's awesome.
So, so that's great. And of course, being from HEB, you all know that yesterday we instituted free curbside delivery, next day curbside delivery, so that people would feel comfortable staying in their cars and not necessarily going into the store if they didn't want to, and did not necessarily have to get a fee for that.
That's awesome. And, if you have questions for Erika or any of our guests following, be sure to post them in the group. We have a really great production assistant here who I happen to be married to, running point on the question answering. He's very good at this, and he will deliver your questions faithfully and without edit.
As a journalist, I'm sure you're keeping track. And a lot of your friends and a lot of your friends are covering what's going on. But I also want to give a shout out to a lot of journalists who have opted to highlight all the positive things and the positive ways that the community is affecting them. I think a lot of the reputation of San Antonio being an embracing city, a city of diversity, and a city that really sits down and says, okay, how can we help each other, is shining through.
Yeah.
As an example. And I really feel like a lot of it is being led by even our own local journalists who are choosing to highlight those stories, who are choosing to do what you're doing here, which is, let's talk about it, and what's happening. So thank you for that as well. And of course, every front line, every nurse,
Oh, heavens.
every military personnel, everybody at ERs, everybody who's testing, they're putting themselves, it's their duty, and they're putting themselves above duty, above self in this. So that's another show as well. And we are Military City USA, but we also have a huge medical community, and I know there's a doctor in the house that's coming on later. And because of that, I think it's important to also give a shout out to those communities that are basically putting themselves out there for the rest of us.
Absolutely. And the disruption to their families, because they have to then quarantine far more heavily than the rest of us. So it's not just the immediate risk, but that you don't just get to then come home and snuggle your kiddos.
Exactly.
You're quarantined and whatnot. And so that is, I agree, a huge thank you to the people who are kind of on overdrive right now. Another thing I am working on a story, one of those fun, feel-good stories, but kind of also it's addressing a deeper thing, which is we're not really known for our good manners and nice behavior online as a culture. And now we're all going to have to interact online. So there are some folks who are kind of raising up to say, it's the Beyond Differences organization. They have tools for Be Kind Online, and they teach middle schoolers. And I was like, well, it looks like everybody's going to need that now, because we're moving into a medium that is known really more for trolling or efficiency, or people getting into unproductive social media spats and whatnot. And so I think it's great to also take this time to remind each other, like, it's time to learn. Okay, sorry about that. So funny story. Talking about good online behavior, I have social media limits set on my phone, which we are recording off of, to keep me from over-consuming news. And as inconvenient as it was right then, and as much as I hope you will all rejoin us, that's another thing when you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't
over imbibe social media.
Yeah, especially like Twitter and the more like hot takes. Yeah. Limit yourself, because I think one of the things where we're talking about it's a time to focus on yourself and focus on others. It's kind of about not making yourself into a bomb.
Yes.
It's about not making yourself into a carrier of the disease, and about not making yourself into like a stressed out.
Yeah. Or carrier of the panic.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That the two pandemics going on, and don't you take care of yourself. It's kind of the airplane thing.
Yes.
Your mask
first.
But
well, I think where we were heading before it cut off was this idea that here's a medium that's known for being efficient and sometimes anonymous in its attacks, and now we all have to basically converse using exactly that medium. And as I was saying, I'm not immune to it. I've been known to be really efficient and short and send it off, and most people are used to it. But now I'm gonna have to reread, and stop and think about the fact that now this is the only true means of communication I might have with people.
And their kids are like pulling on their legs.
Exactly.
Well, you send it to them.
The human brain is scanning, and so I think what you were referring to is really these ideas that we've been talking about, soft skills and human interactions for the longest times, and employers have talked greatly about the need for soft skills and human interactions. And I think we're about to enter a few weeks where we're all going to have to learn some soft skills of online interactions, and being considerate and thoughtful. But I think you said it really, really, really pointedly, is before you click that, before you send reread. I think a long time someone gave me a really great tip, which was, those people that have that efficient mind, or those people that tend to go first to find the gaps or want to criticize first, because that's just their nature. It's, they're critical thinkers. They want to.
And we need them.
Yeah, they want to put kind of like, what's wrong with your post or what's wrong with your comment. I guess to now, what I would recommend is get it in and then stop and be kind enough to put an intro. Be kind enough to go ahead and put while I disagree with your opinion, and then you can put in the heart of your argument. But I think you're right, because remember, the kids are watching us, and they are watching what we're doing. They're watching how we're talking. A lot of times our own kids are monitoring our own social media because we're friends with them, and So it's going to be, I think, really important. We forget that the little ones are watching how we react right now.
Yeah.
And so if you're showing that compassion and that kindness and that sort of, you know, we're going to get through it attitude, that's gonna trickle over to them. You know, as is already traumatized. Although my son, he has his own little podcast, and today we actually recorded on screen time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was about screen time, and his belief was that kids should have all the screen time they want. And of course, I was like, let's talk about this.
Point, counterpoint.
Yes, that's actually the podcast. It's point, counterpoint, parent and child. But you know, he made a good point today, which was that he said, hey, you forget that screen time involves texting. You forget that it involves watching documentaries. You forget that it's going to involve teaching me for the next 3 weeks. And so you have to almost remember that in the world moving forward, you're going to have to redefine what screen time is. So I think as we think about screen time, we're probably going to have to be compassionate with our children and our families and others about what is screen time and how do we redefine it. Productive screen time versus unproductive screen
time. And as you all weigh in on this, it's a good chance to practice your good online manners, because I know you all have opinions about screen time. But yes, we try to limit screen time as much as we can, but we've started to look at like all the different, especially now that they're going to have to learn online and this is where they're going to get their stuff. You go, oh, now is the time for, like you said, a lot of grace and a lot of grace with ourselves. So that's the other thing, is that there's kind of two camps of parents right now. There's the like, give me a schedule, let me, you know, give me that homeschool mom and have her teach me what to do. And then there's the like, whatever, we got cookie dough, we got Netflix, I just want to survive. And
There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong, I think.
I say yes to both of those.
Yeah.
I think whatever I've said since our kids were born, what your kids need is a sane parent.
Yeah.
Like a parent who is present and not overly stressed out by their existence.
Yeah.
And whatever you have to do to give it to them, you do that.
That's true. So
especially right now.
And that's part of the compassionate message, really. You know, there's ambiguity, as we mentioned. There's a lot of unknowns that change hour to hour, sometimes, you know, minute to minute. There's already a lot of stress on systems that we rely on as well, that we depend on. And you know, and then you have, you know, big parts of our society that are isolated. And there's so many things that could cause us to just spiral into us. But I think what I'm really excited about is that that's not happening. Yeah. I think the opposite is happening. I'm seeing people, instead of it becoming a type all of me, they're taking care, to your point. Mask on, my family, my kids, making sure they're okay.
Sanitized.
Then everybody's reaching out. Everybody's reaching out to other people. Everyone's making sure they stay consistent. And so I'm hoping that trend continues and you expand it out, you know, again, to others.
My husband has been saying for a long time that we need, I say this delicately, we need another World War II. But the way that the country came together in World War II and the way that people were planning their victory gardens and rationing and all of that, that sometimes it takes something big for people to kind of have that internal need versus want, or belief versus preference, and to have those conversations with themselves and others. And while nobody wants that to come at the expense of other people's lives, when there is a situation like this where it is happening, the way to make the most of it is to have those exercises in what does it mean to be a good neighbor.
I agree. I agree. Part of it is, you know, how many of you have extra iPads that are like third generation, and you bought another iPad and you have the other one stored somewhere? It's a good time to pull it out, wipe it down, spray it down, and find a neighbor, you know, who may need it. Find someone who can use it. So I think it's going to be a really important time for us to take stock.
I'd love for there to be some kind of like needs bank where people can kind of say, or we could keep track. Maybe
it's actually
SA can.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Like,
virtual needs bank. I will plug sacred.org, SACRD.org. If you are in need of something right now, you can go online, put your zip code, and it's going to tell you the resources that are nearest to you to help. They have about 4 different buckets around food delivery, emergency food pantries, and health emergencies that you can kind of go put in your zip code and find out what's close to you. It's a really great resource, and the reason I love it is because it's not just nonprofits of San Antonio, but it also is church-based and faith-based organizations and programs. So it mixes both the nonprofit helpers as well as the faith-based helpers. And to me, I think it's really a great tool that was set up last year by Compassionate San Antonio, spun off into its own nonprofit. But right now is a great way to look up if you have needs for, and you can look up senior references too, and find out what's close to you that can help seniors as well.
Yeah. Do we need to? How are we doing?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, questions. And
We're gonna
also,
questions
if
at the
you
end.
Oh, gotcha.
if you have resources that you know of similar to that, put them in the comment section, because this video will live on for a while, and then other people can look through, and it'd be great to create resource hubs. That's another thing that, like, I know school districts are trying to do. A lot of different organizations are trying to wrap their heads around how to aggregate all this stuff, because it feels like it's coming from somebody said every company I've ever given my email address to wants to let me know how they're preparing. Like the guy I buy my online office supplies from is
Yes.
letting me know how they're handling
Everybody,
coronavirus.
yes.
And so, but you kind of like
But you know, it's interesting, and I would say, I know we've deleted them, so if you have not dumped your delete bin, here's what I'd like for all of you to do. Go back to all those messages from your credit card company, your pool company, your gym, whatever, and notice the kindness of which they're coming from. They're starting with sentences like, out of the concern for you, out of our consideration for others, and I think that really is ultimately what we want to focus in on. There's a general, I think right now, consideration for others. And so the question is, how do you extend that consideration online, like we said, as you're interacting? But more than that, how do we want to extend that consideration when things in 3 or 4 months start stabilizing some more? Because I think it is a wake-up call, isn't it? To a certain degree, that has always existed in humanity, and it's going to continue to exist. And I know that it's coming out because we're in dire circumstances, but it's in us. It's in us. The ability to reach out to others, to consider the less fortunate, all of that is in us, and we are showing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if any of you ever get bogged down by the nitty-gritty of things, know that there was a time that even though we are, in crisis, we're responding with consideration.
Yeah.
Even those companies that you don't even think about or that only bill you once a year are being considered at these times. And I think that's a really cool thing to note, is that all those sentences, all those emails are starting with a feeling for others as opposed to just the business.
Yeah. So carry that with you into the elections.
Yes, I agree.
Because it'd be great if everybody could be this nice until November, whatever. All right, shall we? We're going to bring Gavin back and continue the conversation.
Guys, again, if you're joining us right now, we had a first part of our video that will be separate on our Facebook page, but you can watch both of them again later. All these Facebook Lives are able to watch again, just like a regular video, anytime after this. So, Erika, you're joining us right back at the end.
Awesome.
So, we're going to now bring in Micah Guerrera from the San Antonio Food Bank to talk about, there you go, the elbow bump. What is that called? There's a hashtag for it.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember. Michael, thank you for being here.
Hey, you're welcome.
I love the San Antonio Food Bank. Before you begin and ask you questions about what we're doing now, I want to say thank you. In 2019, we had many migrants come through San Antonio and stay at Travis Park Church for overnight shelter. And y'all provided all the meals for those migrants. And I think we had over 22,000 just stay at the church, maybe 30,000 or 30-something thousand come through to receive meals, and you provided every one of those for us. And I want to say thank you for that and the good work, and just kind of all the creative ways you serve our community all over the place, and all over Bexar County and South Texas. So thank you for that. Real fast, if you're wondering what we're kind of doing to serve the homeless, that's my primary job at Travis Park Church. Corzo Ministries has actually taken our meals to go. It's like Meals on Wheels to the homeless. At first, we were passing out meals outside our door, but we were still having people really close together. So what our chef did, Chef John Shadwell, is amazing, and he decided to do a Meals on Wheels concept with the help of Joan Cheever from the Chow Train and other people advising him. And now we just go to different parks around San Antonio and spread out the homeless population to those parks where they can safely eat, still get a warm meal that's cooked by Chef John. And so that's what's kind of happening. So I want to give a shout out to Chef John when we're talking about safe ways to be compassionate. Thank you, Corazon Ministries, for finding ways to stay safe and still meet a need to our homeless population, especially in downtown San Antonio. So, Michael, thanks for being here from the San Antonio Food Bank.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on now, how you've prepared for this. You know, obviously this has been weeks in planning, that y'all have kind of seen this boiling. So tell us what you've been doing in the past few weeks and what you're doing now to help the citizens of San Antonio.
Well, and thanks for the shout out for that work. You know, with the church, it was a unique time for our city.
It was.
Hunger doesn't know a border, right? It doesn't often know a religion, doesn't know a legal status. Hunger is hunger. In fact, probably all of us experience at some level each day those pains of hunger. And if we have the financial resources, we get to satisfy them 2-3 times a day. But when you're hungry or food insecure, as we will often say, it's just a symptom of being financially insecure. And the challenge of today is definitely a health crisis and a virus. But in some ways, the immediate impact for our community are those hourly workers who are going to face that financial crisis, right? We went from almost zero unemployment to, who knows, we may get to 20% at least temporary unemployment, right? From 0 to 50 really quick. And it's that low income worker that we're seeing immediately in our lines right now. You know, people who know us know that we serve San Antonio. We serve also a 16 county region of Southwest Texas, really looking after the emergency food needs of those who could face hunger. Week in and week out, it's 300 to 500,000 people. But we know that number is growing and growing fast. Give you an example. Just this Monday, you know, as we kind of, I think a lot of people in San Antonio say we entered into a new phase of what was happening in our communities with the schools closing and of course new things now with restaurants and bars, of course.
Sure.
Typical food bank distribution, we may go and set up in a parking lot or go to a church and help a church in a mobile distribution. We'll see 200 people over a couple hours, 800 people, the very first one Monday morning. Yesterday, Eric was mentioning earlier, you know, the great things that HEB is doing in the community, and they are our best and most important partners in so many ways, and we learn so much from them. They sent, besides sending cash our way for freight and food, and they did to all the food banks across Texas, they sent some donation our way and put a little press about it. It got a little wonky in the press, and people thought, hey, HEB's sending a donation that the food bank's going to give out immediately. People started coming in cars, lining up, and all we could do was think, we need to set up an immediate distribution literally in the parking lot where all our big trucks are. So luckily we had volunteers from the city of San Antonio, some pre-K for SA, amazing teacher aides who came out. We had other volunteers from Tasca, some individuals. Impromptu, we served literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of individuals who just heard the food banks got food from HEB, we need to come and find it. So it's a changing time and a changing environment for us. But it really was that person living on the edge, right? That didn't have margin and savings, didn't have financial security to weather this season that we're seeing, and certainly knowing that they weren't going to have a paycheck. I mean, a month ago they weren't preparing for that, right? They didn't know it, and so living in this city that has the highest poverty rate of any metro in the United States kind of created for us a little bit of a perfect storm, unfortunately, right? With so many low wage earners in hospitality. You know, our restaurant, hotel, catering businesses, just being decimated. You know? So it's been tough being on our side to take the calls that I've been taking the last couple of days. Not from people who are necessarily in need, because that's a call we like because we can tell them how they can get help, but from the owners. I mean, that's been the sobering part, honestly, from the hotel owner on our board who's like, we have no staff anymore, and to let them all go. That was my very first call Monday morning, was from a Marriott local manager. Had a guy at a restaurant today who, for a team member's birthday, said, look, thank you all for ordering food from us. I'm going to bring it myself. I'm the manager. he brought it out and kind of, in tears said, I had 63 employees and I was able to keep 3. How do you choose which 3 of your kids you want to keep out of 63? And he's saying that with tears in his eyes. And it's
Sure.
And so it's those kind of folks who we know, and we're doing everything we can to reach out to those owners to let them know how to get help. But that's the part that's very different right now. It's often it's a senior child in a home that's limited income, and now it's people who couldn't prepare, and are going to be without income for a quite foreseeable future, we think.
Well, you mentioned the schools, and the schools have closed for, now up to
3 weeks.
3 weeks at least. And now some schools will be able to provide food to those students in various ways, and I think the state has allowed that to happen. So when people watching this or watch it later say, okay, I want to get involved. I'm at home. I have a lot of time to kill. I want to do something, but I need to stay home. How can they get involved in the food bank? Or are there ways to personally get involved? During this time, how can people help?
You bet. Well, and I'm glad you brought up the schools. I mean, I've been an educator a lot in my life. My wife is one of the pre-K for SA site directors. We spend a lot of time in that space thinking about the kids these days. If you think, okay, I'm having to choose between gasoline and food these days, right? I'm having to choose between maybe medicine and food. And I had the opportunity to go pick up a sack lunch meal for my kid at school, but there's not necessarily anything for me there, right? Like for the rest of the family. So am I going to drive and spend my gas money to get them a lunch? Maybe I need to save that gas money and use it a different way. It's a bit of a pickle, and it's moving our hearts to try and see how can we layer on what we might see as a food distribution, where we could put together more of a food box and produce bags for those families when they come to get that meal for their son or daughter at their school, breakfast or lunch or dinner, that we can layer on more for the family, right? We want to make that offering attractive. If they're going to spend the gas money and their limited income to come get food, let's give them more than the sack lunch for the child. And so I know Eric was on a call with one of the superintendents today. We're doing some outreach to see how we can partner. And our great friends at the City of San Antonio opened up 18 community centers to do exactly that. And so this evening, 4:30 to 6 o'clock, we're at a dozen different community centers offering a meal for a child, but also then the opportunity to take home food for the entire family. But thank you for asking the question about how can people help. We usually talk about 4 ways: food, time, money, and voice. And the food's an interesting one now. The first calls we got were from people who said, do we need to do a food drive? Do we need to try and collect supplies? And we learn a lot by talking to our friends at HEB about supply chain. And so we called them and said, hey, do we want to put red barrels in your stores? People can buy, just like we do with Christmas, Thanksgiving,
Sure.
right? People can buy things and drop it right there. And as we talked to them and really some of our national partners, we learned about the stress on the supply chain. And so we kind of said, you know what? This is going to be one of those unique times, unlike many crises or disasters, where we're not going to ask for a product donation. We're just going to ask people at this point, support us with the dollar, and then that allows us to use that dollar and to be very strategic in our choice of which product to get from what parts of the country at the best price, right? So it allows us to get the right food in the right amount at the right time. Because if you get the wrong things, it can almost create a second disaster, right? Things you don't need, things that people aren't looking for. So the dollar, we can take that $1, turn it into 10 pounds of food. It's just because we're often paying for the freight and the other products donated. So food, I would say probably minimal on right now, food and supplies. Definitely the dollar. Volunteering and voice. Let's talk about those last two.
Yeah.
We look at ourselves, and I think if you listen to Erika's husband when he's out talking, you listen to Judge Nelson Wolf, city manager, different folks. I mean, they're going to recognize our role in this effort as essential services, and we see ourselves that way, certainly. That means we're going to be open no matter what. We're going to, in a sense, we're that group that rushes into the crisis while others need to run away from it to protect themselves, right? So we want to be there in that case. Volunteers is the lifeblood of our work. The gift that people give us to live in that fine hour of service helps us be efficient. We'll have 1,000 volunteers a week generally that'll help us bend the cost curve, keep expenses down, and get more money into the community. So what do you do when you're not supposed to congregate? Right?
Yeah.
What do you do when you're supposed to?
So how can we volunteer?
Well, you
this,
do that,
yeah.
right? And so I think because of being a bit of essential services, we get somewhat of a pass. But we only get a pass if we can help the community understand the best practices that we're doing, how we're making it so safe for a volunteer. You've been to the food bank to volunteer, so many have. What's different now is you walk in and the first thing is, you get temped, right? You're gonna see, where's your temperature, and if you're too high, you're asked to reschedule. There's a series of questions about recent travel of you or someone in your household, and literally I was walking out the office tonight to come here, and there was a couple, I could see them talking to one of our volunteer managers, and they looked serious, and then they left, and they didn't stay to volunteer, and I said, is everything okay? And they said, we're good, we're gonna come back to volunteer. I'm like, what happened tonight? And it's, well, our son just recently traveled back from Seattle, and he lives with us, and we saw kind of your posting and your sign, and we need to wait a few more days until our 14-day little kind of wait period is done. And so we're trying to do those kind of precautions. We're doing deep cleaning. People are using gloves for the first time when they're doing a lot of our food work from a sorting perspective. And then fascinating, so many food pantries, churches, you'd appreciate this, and others. I mean, they're used to people walking in, maybe shopping for food, grabbing, making their own bag or box. Everything now is a kind of a grab and go distribution. Literally, you kind of drive up, no contact. You can get certified, and the food goes in your trunk.
Wow.
So really trying to minimize.
It's a true curbside delivery.
It is. We're trying to
just like
minimize
HEB,
contact.
you're doing curbside delivery.
And we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the level of response we have to do, but it's so different. And because it's different, then we have to, on a daily basis, keep our website updated. Everybody knows where their HEB is in their neighborhood. Many people knew where their local food pantry was, but with those closing, they don't know where their next distribution is going to be from the food bank. And so they have to go to that website, look ahead for the next couple of days, and see where is it in my neighborhood, what time, where's the closest place I can go. Because it's a mobile strategy and a grab and go that we've never had to completely do before because of this. So, thank God for those volunteers. We've stayed strong this week. I think we have some holes. The meals we do at Haven for Hope could still have some folks lean in and help us. We have a site in Comal County, New Braunfels, and I heard Comal County announced their first case today. And so I think we have a need for some more volunteers there. And I think, as we see this for the long term, we're going to need folks week in and week out for a good while, right?
Right.
And so, we want somebody who's healthy, right? We don't want to put anybody at harm's risk, but if they have the heart and the health and are ready, we're going to give them a great experience.
Great, so the dollar goes a long way. You buy a lot of food with the donations we make online. We'll put that on our Facebook page. Also, we'll put your website there so people can learn how to volunteer safely. And if you feel like you can, go and try to volunteer in a safe manner. So, Michael, by the way, Michael has a theology degree. He told me that you actually have a theology degree. So, Michael, maybe one day we'll be hosting Pub Theology. We can switch places, right?
I have a pub degree and a theology degree. So.
Good. Many of us do. Many of us do. Hey, remember, if you really want to ask questions to any of us or those who are left here at the end, we'll try to answer a few of your questions. So post your comments below, those questions below. Again, remember, there's a previous video of this. You can see the start of this Pub Theology. Just if you scroll up to videos on our Facebook page, you'll see the previous Facebook Live that got cut off. But we're still live, I think, now, hopefully. And so we're going to continue on now, and I'm going to bring back a few people here. But we're about to introduce Dr. Erika Gonzales. She's the chairwoman of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, but also a doctor in town. And I'm going to bring back Bekah here to interview her and to talk about safe methods we can do as a community and stay safe, right? So, Doctor, thanks for being here, and you're back on. Bekah.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what you do and your perspective on this time and how we should be helping each other.
Absolutely. So my background is in allergy, asthma, and immunology. So this is kind of right up our field with what's going on today.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the city has been sending exactly the right message to our community. We need to try to do our part to help with the social distancing because that's going to be the most effective thing for our community in order to delay the transmission and keep us as healthy for as long as possible.
Excellent. So how do you balance the economic concerns of the city and the health concerns? Because I know that when we've kind of been hearing from all sides, what does the equation look like as businesses are thinking about what should they be doing, how many of their workers should be coming in? What does that look like, and what are you hearing, and how are you advising people?
So I think it's very complicated, right? So I'm not sure anybody really knows exactly how that all interplays, but what we do know is that they do kind of all feed off each other. So if, we need a strong economy, but if we don't have a strong, healthy community, then our economy can't be strong.
Sure.
And so it's almost like the chicken and the egg, right? So,
Right.
Right now, when we're looking at what the most detrimental thing would be, is we know that our economy's taking a hit, and we're doing our best to try to make sure that we're continuing to support our small businesses in any way we can. But the worst thing that can happen to our community right now is to overrun our healthcare system.
Right.
And that's the risk that we're running.
Right.
And that's what countries like Italy are facing right now.
Mhm.
And when that happens is we see a lot of loss in our community in the forms of death, people who are not able to get the health care that they need. And then of course that's a burden on the economy as well. So
That's true.
really it's a hard balance right now.
It really is.
And I think that, what we're trying to accomplish is let's flatten the curve. That's,
Right.
been a phrase that's
Yeah.
been thrown around. If we can flatten the curve, then the healthcare system is able to keep up with the cases as they pop up.
And is there healthcare innovation going on? Like, I'm wondering if there's people in the background who are scrambling to okay, now's the time to launch the new, whatever, like a new ventilator, or what's being done to lift our capacity?
And so almost immediately when this started happening worldwide, the NIH and researchers in DC started working on trying to find a vaccine for this.
Sure.
And so of course, vaccines normally can take anywhere from 2 to 15 years to get on the market. So
That's too long.
yeah, and and it really just depends, right? Because it has to go through a certain process, make sure that it goes through all the FDA requirements in order for it to be safe.
You don't want to be the first person who's like,
Right,
yeah, give me that.
Right. And so, but in times of crisis, we take what we call a fast track. Like we still take all the safety measures, but there's no waiting in line for you to get the approval from the government or anything like that.
Cut out the bureaucracy.
Yes, all the red tape's taken out so that things can
Yes.
go, flow a lot quicker. And so we do have people that are looking for a vaccine at this point, and hopefully we find one. This is not something, unfortunately, that's going to go away quickly. We will see it die down, but just like the normal seasonal flu, we'll see spikes up and down until we figure it out a little bit more.
So the protocols that are in place, do these stay for best practices? Would these stay until it's gone? Or is there a threshold that will cross eventually where it's like, okay, you can come out of your houses now. We're past the
Sure.
the bump of the hopefully flatter,
Right.
but past the bump of the curve.
Yeah, so definitely there's a time when we're going to, safely be able to say, hey, let's resume life as normal. That'll be the point when we see the rates of transmission slow down.
Gotcha.
And so, in general, a virus takes about 7 days to transmit. So, if I were to have an infection, it would take 7 days before maybe somebody else would be able to double the rate, right? So 2
Right.
more people get infected because of me.
Right.
What we're seeing with coronavirus is that time lapse has actually gone to 2 days. So
Right.
we're transmitting rates much quicker than we
Mhm.
would with other viruses that we've seen.
Interesting.
So what social distancing is allow us to do is if one person gets infected, just me by myself, I have the capacity to infect 400 other people in 1 month. If we reduce social distancing, even my exposure by 50%, if I stay at home 50% of the time more than I normally do, that 400 a month to 15 a month.
Oh, good.
And if I expose my time out in the environment by 75%, it goes from 400 to 2 a month. So the more we stay inside, the less we're going to infect other people, and then that's going to flatten it out.
Now, you say inside, like We've got a big empty field across the street. Can we go out there?
Sure. So, the outdoors is safe, right? So we tell people go enjoy the outdoors with your family, right?
Yeah.
You live in that community, so the community that you live with in the household should be able to continue to have interaction with each other.
Yeah.
The outside is safe. We're in the open air. There's not a lot of risk for kind of containing a virus in an open environment like that.
So that's great, because I think when people hear house lockdown, they're picturing like a stale smelling, your dishes piled up and you're in your bathrobe for 2-3 weeks. But that's not necessarily healthy either. We need to not have any other kinds of health crises piled on top of this.
Right,
Like,
correct.
be healthy.
Right.
Don't drink yourself into oblivion.
Now, if we were to actually, and this would be an impossible feat, but if we were able to keep everyone home, every single citizen in San Antonio home for 2 weeks, this thing would die down, right? Because it takes, the reason we say 14 days is because that's the length of the infection.
Right.
And so if you keep everybody home, then those people that are sick didn't have the opportunity to expose anybody else. So that would be an ideal kind of world.
How will vulnerable populations get access to testing?
Well, that's a good question. And so luckily, the mayor and the city leadership has worked really hard in trying to improve access to testing. That's been one of the most challenging things for us right now. So the algorithms for who's eligible for us to test has continued to change. And so now if you are vulnerable, in the vulnerable population, which would definitely include our elderly, anybody who has comorbid conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, if you're in one of those populations and you're showing the symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19, then a doctor will evaluate you, give you an order, and now we have testing centers that we can send you to here in the city that would go ahead and test for you. So the people that we're testing as priority are healthcare workers, our first responders, and those who are high risk.
Now, in the testing, if you say you test positive, what does that change as opposed to I'm super sick, but I tested negative? What's like if I come in and I am just feeling terrible, or I feel something coming on,
Sure.
and it's going to be bad, that feeling, and I test. What's the difference? What happens to me if I test positive versus what happens to me if I test negative as far as healthcare? What's the care for?
Healthcare doesn't change, it's more of what the recommendations would be, right? So, because if you came to me with any virus, even if it wasn't coronavirus, and if you were having problems breathing, I'm going to help you.
Right.
I'm going to help you the same way as if it was caused by the normal flu or whether it's coronavirus. The treatment is going to be the same. The difference is that you're more likely to have problems if it is coronavirus.
So we're going to get you where we can watch you.
Right. So we have a little bit of a lower threshold, and we just know that not parents, but patients are going to have a more difficult time with the corona because it seems to be more aggressive as far as respiratory symptoms are concerned.
Gotcha. Interesting. Any other questions, you guys? This is you have access to all the questions. I went to one of the last few things I did before all the quarantining was I went to a Pilates class, and the women in my Pilates class are internet readers. And
That's dangerous.
They knew a lot about the coronavirus, and I trust these ladies to check their sources, but there's a lot of shaky information out there.
Yes, there is, and I think that's why we all need to be careful to look at reliable sources of information. So CDC, NIH, local government, they'll have the reliable data based on facts. And so it's easy to read stuff out there and get scared, and it creates anxiety in our community. And the one thing I can say is that besides social distancing, the most important thing we can be doing now, which we should be doing all the time, is washing our hands. And I know there's a scarcity of antibacterial agents, but washing your hands with water and soap is actually the best thing you can do.
20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Front and back.
20 seconds.
Between the fingers.
Yes.
We just got we got a question. You kind of answered it. What are the best websites? Will you go through again slowly so everybody can write them down? What websites should we be looking at for reliable information?
So the most reliable and the one that's always going to be up to date is going to be the CDC. And then all of your other government agencies are getting their information from the CDC. So almost everybody will have a link directly back to the CDC. but it would be CDC followed by local government, so the city of San Antonio. Those are all sources that you can guarantee are checking their facts and making sure that they're disseminating information that's correct.
How about op-eds by epidemiologists or medical professors, or because I see a lot of that.
Sure, and so it's funny, there's a saying in the allergy community that if you have 10 allergists in the room, you'll get 10 different opinions.
Right.
Yes. So, and it's going to be the same for any profession, right?
Uh-huh.
So these people are going to be speaking from their own personal experience, and and a lot of it is going to be opinion based too, mixed with facts. And so you just need to, if you know the source, then it's reliable for you. But I can't speak to it that just because they have a doctor before their name that's necessarily going to be the most reliable source.
Right, because there's like 20 of them on HuffPost. And, so the other thing that we wanted to talk about is ways to safely support businesses.
Yeah.
And we're going to do tonight I had to run an essential errand, and I happened to be in the area of the Pearl when I heard that restaurants were closing. So I rushed in to make sure that I could get one last takeout because I wasn't sure how extensive the shutdown was going to be. And so I ran into Cured, and they are doing curbside pickup along with many others. But one thing, when I was there, I was looking around, and I know that a lot of servers and bartenders, tips are a huge part of their income. And so I kind of in my head thought, now is the time to tip on. Sometimes when you're buying stuff and you're like, do I need to tip? They didn't really prepare anything. Like, yes.
Right.
When they give you the option, tip generously, because there's fewer of us. There was not enough people in the restaurant for those folks to be getting a decent wage tonight. And so tip well. And then I've also heard people say that when there's events that are canceled, don't ask for a refund. And while it hurts to take that $75 hit or whatever, if you were in the position to buy $75 concert tickets, you're probably better off than the folks who are not going to have a job because they worked at a venue.
Sure.
And that's how they were going to get paid. And so they're just thinking of little ways that we can kind of, talking about minimizing curves, slow the financial impact and the hit that all of these places are going to be taking, because it's not about, as much as I love the chef at Cured, it's not about him only, it's about all of his servers. It's not about the Tobin Center, it's about the people who clean between shows and the ticket takers and stuff. And so we need to really it's kind of like those anti-piracy video things where they said, you think you're taking money from the big studio, but remember that there's production assistants, there's movie box office workers, and every industry has people who are going to feel it, get hit the hardest, and don't have the margin. And so
So I think it's kind of like a little bit of what you were speaking before. In a time of crisis, communities really do come together.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that all over San Antonio, and it doesn't surprise me from a community like this. And so I think that if you have the means and you're able to, then don't ask for the refund. Of course, we're all in very unique financial situations. Some of us may not have a choice but to need to ask for it. But I think that people are doing the right thing. I think that most people, if they know that they can, they are kind of just continuing to support what the organization that it was.
I think that's great. Okay, and now I'm going to switch with Gavin.
Well, thank you guys for this alternating hosting, because we're trying to stay distant from each other in a way. But Erika, thank you so much for coming. I met you just a few days ago at the South Texas Blood Donor Center on I-10. And that's one thing that also we can get involved in. So tell us a little bit more about the shortage maybe and what we can do.
And so I can't stress enough that at a time of crisis, the medical community, one of the first things that they start to need help with is with blood donations. So that's one of the first things that diminishes, and we need donors to go out there and give blood because we're trying to not only plan for today but for the future. So we don't know how much our healthcare system is going to be impacted. So the more blood that we have now, the better prepared we're going to be. So if you can and you're feeling healthy, go out there and
Donate blood, and you can just go to their driveway,
Right.
park, go into their main center. They'll check your temperature. They'll make sure that you're good to donate. I know that there were a lot of people there when we were there,
Yeah.
and so that's a really good thing. So don't forget to donate blood during this time as well. So, Doctor, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring back Erika Prosper, which reminds me, y'all both were chairwomen
Yes.
of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So y'all have that in common. So that's kind of fun to have.
Besides the name.
Really important
Sound
people.
the same.
Same name, same title. Hey, it's all right. Well, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
We'll bring back up Erika. Real fast, the meal that I brought today, Bekah brought cured. We brought some juice from Pure Juice in Southtown, which are all great things to get to go. I brought, and I'm going to jump up real fast, a meal from Two Brothers Barbecue and Jason Dady. They have barbecue places all in town. The main one is kind of in central San Antonio, and they're offering meals for families to go. Curbside pickup out of Two Brothers Barbecue. So you can order, right here we have turkey, brisket, macaroni and cheese, and you can get various amounts of meat,
Cool.
and you can stock up for your family.
It's good barbecue too.
It's good barbecue. Well, they also have an ice house in Southtown owned by the Dady's and also the Newmans.
Yeah.
So people, a lot of restaurants are struggling. They're trying to find new ways to serve you and your family. So barbecue places are great because you can get pound by the meat. I also know that Jason Dady is offering catering and meals sent to your home. So we'll put his website on there. So there's ways to stay connected, support our local community, and also get really good food.
Yeah, I actually had, before I came here, I had delivered from True Flavors Catering. Denise, Mark Hernandez, Chef Johnny Hernandez, and they delivered this a really amazing family meal too.
Yeah.
I think theirs was like $17. And it had 3 beautiful big pieces of chicken. It was Mediterranean chicken with stewed olives and tomatoes and a big vat of rice and hummus. And so I think all of us are doing our part. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna pick up on the way home clementine as well. Just gonna stock the fridge up because trying to teach Jonah and not having as much luck with the cooking as I wanted to with the
Me
time.
either. I know how to cook soup.
But I think Dr. Gonzales said it. I'm blessed to be able to use that as an option. There are a lot of families who aren't, and so I'm really grateful for the food bank.
That's right.
I want to give a hand out though to Dr. Gonzales because I think she explained social distancing and the need and how fast it travels really clearly. So thank you for that. I think anybody who's listening, give a re-listen to that because I thought it was really helpful to understand why we're asking everyone to kind of stay the arm's length away.
Yeah. And remember, we've been plugging restaurants, but remember, the food bank offers curbside delivery too. So if you really need some food and support, you can go to your local food bank and they will deliver that food right to your car.
And most of the ISDs are also providing the food meal away from home. I know SAISD has 27 locations they've bumped up throughout the city from the north all the way to the south where SAISD is, and you can go to any of these 27 locations. And curbside also pick up a meal for your child, breakfast and lunch as well. So don't hesitate to also reach out if you're an SAISD parent. And I'm only speaking to SAISD because as an SAISD parent I got that, but I'm sure NAISD and NSD, Harlandale, Edgewood, I'm sure they all have their own meal systems as well. So please look up the website of your district to find out where you can get fed and where you can get your children fed if you need to.
Also, SAISD is feeding anybody. You don't have
that's
to
right.
be a...
We just got told SAISD is feeding anybody. You don't have to be an SAISD child. If you are a child anywhere in the city, roll up to one of the 27 elementary schools, middle schools, or high schools that are in that list, and they will feed your child. So please make sure that your child doesn't go hungry. There are many resources.
And that's great vision thinking because about a year or two ago, Diego Bernal passed a legislation and signed by a unanimous vote by the Texas Congress to allow schools to potentially use their food for anyone.
That's fantastic. Shout out Diego.
Yeah.
This is now critical.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We'll plug Diego there because he wasn't even thinking about a crisis. He was just thinking normal food deserts that exist, and especially the waste of food that sometimes schools do. And now that can be given any time of the year, but especially in this time of crisis, Anybody can receive food at that the food bank in those schools. One question that I just got texted, I don't know if it's up here yet, and that is how can people get involved in senior centers? You talked about the organization a little bit. You can talk about that again. If somebody wants to get involved, they're healthy, they want to care for somebody, how can they do that?
Well, so first of all, you have to take into consideration that the locations that are in charge of our seniors are really the first offense. So follow their rules. If you call and you want to volunteer and they tell you that these are the ways in which you can volunteer for that specific center or home, follow those rules. Outside of that, I think what might come out of today is a creative way in which we can collectively figure out how to send messages to many seniors and help ensure that they don't stay lonely while they are in social distancing circumstances. But I would say that you can reach out to AARP and find out what they've set up with local senior centers. Reach out to OATS, Older Adults Technology Services. Even though they're focused on technology, they're plugged into a lot of the senior different organizations throughout town. Senior Planet as well. You can go online and find out how you can support seniors during this time of crisis. But I would say that really, if you're healthy and you want to help, the first thing to do is call up and find out what are the rules for helping. Much like the food bank stated,
Sure.
They have their own rules, and that's really to benefit the person that you're trying to help, to ensure that they remain healthy as they're sort of isolating themselves.
And we all live in a neighborhood,
Yes.
right? Or most of us, and sometimes we fail to get to know actually our neighbors. Like I'm talking about people who live on your street next door, and if you actually think about, I actually don't know them. This is a time maybe we can write letters to each other, and there might be a senior citizen on your own block, on your street, that you can write a letter to saying if you need something, if you're afraid to go to HEB or the food bank or a restaurant, I'll help you pick up the food to go and leave it at your door, right? There are ways we can reach out to our neighbors that are close to us. In my faith, it says to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
A lot of people think neighbor means, the whole world. I actually don't think it means that. I actually think it means closeness, and it actually means neighbors, because I can only be neighbor to somebody next to me. And so reach out to your neighbor, look at the people on your block, find the vulnerable population on your street and say, I can go and serve you food, I can find ways to connect you with the things you need. And I think that is loving your neighbor.
I also think that what was mentioned earlier by Dr. Gonzales about how open air spaces are less likely that you can go out, you can enjoy the sun. There are a lot of parks where you can keep your distance, but you can wave to someone, or you can chat at the 6 foot sort of level. And there are probably you'll see a lot of seniors that are out there. So there's a senior park, I believe, in the south side. I cannot remember the name, but we'll find out and we'll post it. It's a senior center next to a senior park where a lot of seniors will walk. We'll take a walk on the track. We'll do a lot of things. You can go and walk your dog or partake in that and stay the distance, but still say hello to them. So I would say that that's another option, is go to your local parks, and if you do see somebody who's elderly and is walking their dog or walking by themselves, feel free to keep your distance, but engage them in conversation or say hello, because I think that is really a relief in many ways to find out that open air situations are still a viable option to meet people.
Yeah, self-quarantine doesn't always mean you lock yourself in a room.
Yeah.
A friend of mine and a friend of yours, Rocio Gunther, who works for the city now, she came back from Mexico and was like, I'm gonna quarantine myself for 14 days. And but she still went out and biked today, right?
Yes.
If you're a biker, you can go bike pretty fast. You don't really interact with anybody because you're flying by. So you can still do those things and quarantine yourself, but still get out and see nature, the parks. We have a great trailway now that connects the south side all the way to the north side. Get out there, move around, stay healthy. I have a personal trainer, and she came to my driveway today, and we just worked out on my driveway.
Interesting.
So we just did stuff on my driveway that we could do, and we stayed a safe distance.
There's another population I think is worth mentioning, and that's because I have several friends who have family members. There's also those that are compromised, whether it's because of their immune system, or children who have immunodeficiencies, or who have special needs that require a lot of stuff. And so we're talking about compassion, and I can't say this enough. At least at HEB, we're fully stocked. We have the stuff you need, The problem is that sometimes people in again, in a state of flux, in a state of unsureness, they'll buy more than they need because they don't know what's next. And I understand that feeling, but we have to take into consideration that there are all these other groups of people that are immunocompromised or that need some of those cleaning supplies more than us regular folks that might be healthy right now. So I'd also ask that you take into consideration, and this applies to our seniors too, that you take into consideration and buy just what you need for that week. We are 100% able to supply stock for the next day, but one of the things we're finding is that people are buying in bulk, or groups of people are coming and taking everything. And while I can understand the need to assuage your own fear, I'd almost ask that if we want to continue to be compassionate, that we take into consideration that there are many parents out there that are asking, hey, anyone have a bottle of sanitizer? Anyone have extra expectant spray because my son is immunocompromised and I need to make sure things stay clean. So let's take that also into consideration. I wanted to bring it up because I know
that's good. I really wanted to talk about that, how to be a compassionate shopper.
Yes.
Because we've seen all the photos, we've seen kind of the chaos of people just eagerly hoarding.
And I think, if you've done that because you weren't sure of what was coming, and again, everyone deals with it their own way, but if you find that you have an extra, 6-pack of toilet paper, if you do see a senior citizen, ask them if they need some. I'm finding that a lot of our seniors haven't been able to necessarily get some of those basic things because it's run out. And so that's another way to be caring right now, is if that what we used to tell our 3-year-olds, sharing is caring. If you do find yourself with more than you need, then please feel free to reach out and donate to someone in your neighborhood that might need that.
Yeah, or donate to the food bank. Say, I have an arsenal of stuff here and I really don't need it. You can donate it to the food bank.
Or find out if one of your friends or one of your acquaintances has an immunocompromised child and might need extra as well. This is a great time to reach out and ask people what they need.
Yeah. All right, well, we're concluding our time here, our very first online Pub Theology. I want to say thank you to the food bank. I want to say thank you to Michael Guerrero from the food bank, Dr. Erika Gonzales, who is an allergist here in town and also the chairwoman of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And also thank you, Erika Prosper, for being here. I have one last question for you. We're going to end it with you. And I also want to thank, how can I forget, Bekah, my co-host, extraordinaire, reporter. You're waving
behind the camera.
She's behind the camera now. We have my last name's Rogers, so I have an affinity for Mr. Rogers.
Oh,
right?
I love him.
And your family kind of has championed this be a good neighbor thing. Not only on the 1005 Faces, but give your Mr. Rogers moment. What would Mr. Rogers say to us as a people right now? If he was at his show, he would talk about it.
Yeah.
Because he had themes that were about great tragedy.
Yeah.
So this tragedy is happening. What would he say to the people experiencing loss? For people experiencing maybe like fear? How to talk to your kids? Give us your last few minutes of Mr. Rogers channeled through Erika here.
Well, that's a big cardigan, Phil. I'm a huge fan of Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Santico's, SA 2020, and some others, because last year they filmed the Mr. Rogers neighborhood documentary for free. 3 screens for anybody in the community to come for free, and I was so happy to be able to go and take Jonah.
And if you're Netflix and chilling, you can watch it. I think it's probably somewhere on some Amazon or Hulu or someplace.
Yes, you can track it down somewhere. It was a PBS documentary, so you can start there as well. Well, what I think is interesting is the way that I think Mr. Rogers would approach it, because he was always a child advocate first and foremost. And the whole notion of won't you be my neighbor was really to reinforce in children the basis for compassionate living. And I think the first thing he would do is really sit us down and say, let's talk about fear, especially fear of something that can't be seen. A lot of times when we talk about kids and trauma, it's in relation to something that they've experienced themselves, have seen it or have gone through it. But this is something that is unknown, and it's a microscopic unknown, and it's an unknown in so many ways. And I think he would tell us all, from that child perspective, to understand that in times of unknown, the best thing we can do is to come together and be kind and to give the benefit of the doubt. You know, it is allergy season in Texas, unfortunately, and you might see someone coughing next to you. You know, don't give them an ugly look. Don't make a big deal. Be kind about it. Give them the benefit of the doubt that they've thought through things. Keep your distance, just like everything else. But I think that's what he would say in many ways, is that we're at a juncture where, fear can either grip you or it can allow for you to be gentle and kind and assume the best in others.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that he would explain it to us, is that this is a time to assume the best from others, assume that they are going to be responsible, rely on a lot of our different levels of leadership, whether it be a local, state, national, to move forward in what we need to do. And in the meantime, take care of one another, so that we can continue to basically, come together and show that kindness that he was so famous for.
Sure.
And I think to wrap it up, because pub theology is about faith in the end, it really comes down to that, is have faith in your ability to teach your child something while they're home. And it doesn't have to be strictly academics. Your children also need to know how to deal through crisis from you. They also need to know how to have fun. They also need to know what you were like when you were a kid, and so talking to them about it. They also need to know, some of the greatest hits from your generation, so play the music. There's so many ways in which you can do that. And the other thing about it is be kind to yourself as well when it comes to what you're putting in your body during this time. So it's a great way to not only eat healthy, but at the same time, finally take that box of spice cake that was behind things and bake the muffins and partake in that part of food as well. I think ultimately this is a great time for us as a community to really reflect, but more importantly, to just kind of treat ourselves kindly, because you don't know how long we're going to have to do this. But quite frankly, I think after it's gotten down, we're going to reflect and see some of the best of humankind that came out during this time. And so look out for those just as much as we're looking out for the warning signs of everything else. And so I would say that that's part of the faith. Yeah. Faith in yourself, faith in your neighbor, faith in your community, and ultimately faith that we're going to come out of this better than ever as a country, as a world, and quite frankly as a humankind.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Erika, for being here. Real fast, we'll try to be back here next week, somehow live at Pub Theology, maybe a pre-recorded a session to talk about whatever's happening in a week from now. I also want to remind our viewers that a virus isn't racist, right? A lot of people are boiling right now and blaming certain ethnic groups for this virus, and I think that's something that we're going to talk about next week. Is that we need to teach our kids and teach our population not to look at this outbreak as something that an ethnic group created or put on us. And I've heard this vernacular and online and these unkind things. And so that's something that we need to kind of reflect on and as a community fight against, because it's something that hurts many people in our communities and all around the world. So we're going to be continue to talk about these things as we're in this journey together. And I have faith in you to make the right decision for your family and your community. So thank you for being here. Thank you to Bekah and all that. We'll see you next week.